Ayo friendos, welcome back to my channel. And if it's your first time here, hello, my name is Laurel. I'm no pro makeup artist, I'm just a weirdo that likes to collect and experiment with really nice makeup. Now today's video is one of my absolute favorites to do, one of my absolute topics to follow on YouTube, and that's a ranking video. I just feel like they're a really informative way to find out a lot of info on different products all at one time, all in one go. And today we're doing all my Huda Beauty palettes. So before me, I have 8 different palettes. We have Rose Quartz, we have Nude, we have the Rose Gold Remastered, the Desert Dusk, the Naughty Nude palette, the Mercury Retrograde palette, the Sapphire Obsessions, and the Lunar New Year Tiger Wild Obsessions palette. Huda is one of the top 5 brands that I talk about on this channel, so you can feel free to subscribe. There's plenty more Huda content coming your way. So I'm not going to prattle on any longer, we're just going to get into it. Stay tuned. So friendos, I want to preface this by saying that none of my Huda Beauty palettes are actually palettes that I dislike. Now there's clearly some that I like more than others, and I'll get into why something ranks lower versus higher. But yeah, there's not a single one that I don't at least enjoy using. Alright, so at number 8 we have Desert Dusk. Here is her color story. So it looks really pretty, but what I will say is the shimmers tend to be kind of soft. They're not very brilliant, they're not very sparkly. This is also one of Huda's driest formulas. This is the only one that I would say probably is around a C+ and definitely doesn't deserve to be in the luxury category of makeup. This used to be $65, but they're no longer selling it. Wonder why? I still do like it, but it just wasn't as special as her other ones. Also, it has a glitter shade. Huda's glitters are not very good in my opinion. Like, they are okay, but you always need a glitter glue to make them work. And I feel like most luxury and a lot of high-end brands have already gotten their glitters figured out where you don't need the glue in order to make the glitters work. Okay, so that's why that is in the number 8 spot. Let's move on to number 7. So at number 7, we have her Sapphire Obsessions. This is the color story. Now the reason that this ranked lower on my list is this right here has a lot of glitter fallout. I mean a ton. Probably one of the worst of all the palettes that I have ever owned. You really have to use a lot of setting spray to get it to work, and even then you're still probably going to get a lot of glitter vomit on your face with this palette. Also, the chartreuse shade in the palette is not that great. Like, it takes a lot of building up, but I still enjoy the color story of this. I do really enjoy this column right here the most out of all of them. And the sparklies are really sparkly. Just unfortunately, they can end up on your cheeks and not on your eyes. At one time, this palette sold for, I believe, $27, but it is no longer available for purchase. Next up, I have one of the most visually stunning palettes of all time. It's the Nude palette. So this is coming in at number 6. There's the color story for you guys to see. Now, why this palette is also not in the top is because it's a cool toned color story. I'm more into warm tones. Also, the glitters, same story as with the Desert Dusk. They're just not good glitters. I will say though, the mattes are very pigmented and pretty. Even the ones though that look warm tone, they're actually pretty cool toned upon application. Like, for example, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And that they're very neutral leaning cool, even though they appear neutral leaning warm in the pan. And then the number 1 reason for it being lower on the list is this concealer down here. Now the concealer was just fine. You could use that to bond the glitter to your eye, but it didn't come with any sort of cover on it, and it gets dirty really quickly. Mine has lint on it and it kind of looks gross. I'm almost embarrassed to show off this palette, to be honest, because it's very dirty. Now at number 5, we have the Rose Gold Remastered palette. This is what she looks like inside. I very much appreciate the variation in colors in this palette. A lot of Huda's palettes are kind of, I don't want to say one note, but I feel like I can only get about 3 different, like dramatically different looks out of each of those palettes. Whereas this one, I can get a variety of different looks. Where this palette falls short for me is the glitter souffle shades. They sink in. It's weird. I don't like that formula. I don't think anyone did, honestly. Maybe someone did. If you liked it, let me know in the comments down below. I want to hear from you. But also, the sparkly shades are really not that sparkly. They're really more of a metallic satin than an actual sparkly glitter. And I just would want more sparkle. That's my thing. With that said, I still have created a lot of beautiful looks with this palette, and I do really enjoy all the mattes in the palette except for the shade Suede. That one is just kind of ugly. I feel like it doesn't know what it wants to be, and it just ends up looking like dirt on my eye, or like I haven't taken my makeup off in 3 days every time I use that shade. Moving on. Now we're getting into the palettes that I enjoy reaching for more often. We have the Naughty Nude. There's her color story. Ooh. So really interesting, very aesthetically different from everything else that launched around this time. This one also leans neutral warm. I really appreciate the cranberry shades in the palette. Can I create a lot of different looking looks with this palette? Not really. I get around 2 or 3, but the ones that I have created with this palette I feel like are really pretty, and I think that they look good with my blue eyes. I could have dealt without the slippery shade though. This is the first time we see this show up, and I wish that Huda would get rid of the slippery shade. And every time I hear Huda talk about the slippery shade, she says that everyone loves it and they can't wait for it to come back. And I'm like, who said that? My main fallout with the shade is that normally these on Sephora or in their campaign photos, they look a lot more pigmented than how they are in the actual pan. And they really just come down to being Vaseline. So yeah, that's where I fall with this palette. Also, this palette retails for $67 in case you are interested. Next is one of my newest palettes. It's the Tiger Wild Obsessions. This is in the Lunar New Year packaging. So when I first got this, I thought that this was a brand new palette. It's not. They launched these around 4 months ago, but this is the Lunar New Year packaging. Really cool, to be honest. So I've really enjoyed dipping into this palette. For one, it's impeccable quality. This did come from China, so I was really shocked. I do feel like the price tag is a bit hefty for a product from China. It is $29, but I can't stop reaching for this, especially the yellows. Yellows are missing from my collection. If they're missing from yours, you might want to consider picking this one up because it's very nice. All right, number 2. Number 1 and number 2 were the hardest for me to figure out which spots they should go in. But for number 2, I'm going to place the Rose Quartz palette in that place. This is what she looks like. This is the latest big palette from Huda. This came out, I remember, before Christmas time. It's so beautiful. Do you get a plethora of different looks out of this palette? I don't, but it has to be Huda's best formulation of all time. The mattes are creamier, they're a little bit more pigmented. The duochromes are next level. I do find that I need to swatch the duochromes on my arm before I apply them to my lid because I can't really remember what they look like on the eye versus in the pan because they do kind of come out differently. There's a couple of them that look swirly. This, not just in this palette, but in other ones where you just have to kind of swatch them to know what they're going to look like on the eye. But the duochromes are all so different and so pretty, even though they look very similar in the pan. We did get another slippery shade, so I wish that had not been in there. But otherwise, this formulation, no lie, is an A+ for me. The rest of Huda's palettes range between C+, and I would say like Desert Dusk is probably a C+ palette, to this one being A+. And finally, in the number 1 spot, it's the Mercury Retrograde. This is what she looks like inside. Mine is very used. A few of my shadows are crumbling now. I dropped this one time and it has never forgiven me. With this one, you absolutely get more variety. You get more color spectrum, you get different textures, and it's definitely her most fun palette. For those of us who crave color and sparkliness, this is the one. Aside from the shades being very easily broken, this one right here in the corner is not that great. It just doesn't blend out well. It feels kind of waxy. It feels almost like a Morphe shadow. Other than that, I really like the formulation on this, and I would give this an A-. This normally retails for $67, but I just saw on Sephora it is now on sale for $33. So if you don't have it, you like color, you like sparkle, and you like the color story overall, I highly suggest you go pick this up now before it goes off sale. Alright, so I'm going to give you guys some final thoughts. So final thoughts about Huda Beauty's palettes overall. I feel like they are intended for Instagram. What I mean by that is they are designed to look aesthetically pleasing on Instagram, so you will click and buy. And sometimes the color stories that just look so gorgeous on Instagram don't necessarily translate equally on the eye or in the hand of the user, because you're limited on the shade ranges on each of them. Like I've said before, you get about 2 or 3 different looks out of most of the palettes, but beyond that, I don't really see the need for there to be 18 different pans when some of the shades are so similar. I also wish that Huda would come out with more warm tone palettes. My sister definitely grabs for these more. She loves her cool tones. I love my warm tones. So depending on what you like, you might really gravitate towards the Huda Beauty brand if you've never tried them out before. The larger palettes are normally made in Italy. The smaller palettes, the little 9 pans, are typically made in China. I'm not sure why some are 65 or some are 67. I have no idea. And if you've ever gone to Sephora and you've swatched them, beware, because a lot of time the swatches don't do the palettes justice. These can be kind of dry to the touch, but they do blend out well on the eye, and it doesn't take much work to get good pigmentation out of the palettes overall. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Let me know in the comments down below which is your favorite Huda palette. Which one are you most excited to try out in the future? I love reading your comments and responding down below. If you are a new sub, be sure to tell me hello. I would really like to say hello back. Please subscribe if you have not done so already, because if not, we'll both have to live in the shadow of never knowing what could have been. Okay guys, bye.